Carla Johnson was a successful woman who had built a thriving business from the ground up. She had worked hard her entire life to get to where she was today. At the age of 35, she had achieved a level of financial success that many could only dream of. She was proud of her accomplishments, but she never let it change the person she was. Carla was humble, down to earth, and believed in helping others whenever she could. One sunny afternoon, after selling one of her companies, Carla walked into a local bank to deposit a check. The check was a large amount of money, one that represented her hard work and dedication. She had a small business account at this particular bank, and she usually handled all her transactions there. The bank had been reliable, and Carla trusted them. As Carla approached the counter, she was greeted by the bank manager, Mr. James Thompson, a middle-aged man with graying hair and a professional demeanor. He smiled and asked how he could assist her. Carla handed him the check along with her identification, and as she did, she noticed a slight hesitation in his eyes. He looked at the check, then back at her, and something about his expression made her uneasy. "I'm sorry, but I'm going to need to verify this check," Mr. Thompson said, his voice polite but firm. "It's a large sum, and I need to make sure everything checks out before we process it." Carla was surprised. She had been doing business with this bank for years, and never had there been any issue with a check. "Of course," she replied, trying to stay calm. "I can wait." Mr. Thompson walked to the back office, still holding the check in his hands. Carla sat down, feeling a slight sense of discomfort. She wondered if there was something wrong with the check. She had sold her business to a reputable company, and there should be no reason for the delay. She waited patiently, but as time passed, she began to feel more frustrated. After what seemed like an eternity, Mr. Thompson returned. He was no longer smiling. "I'm afraid we can't process this check today," he said. "There are some discrepancies with the funds. We'll need to verify a few things before we can proceed." Carla's eyes widened. Discrepancies? There was no way that could be true. She knew that the check was legitimate. She had seen the company's account balance, and everything had been in order. Carla's frustration was starting to turn into anger. "What do you mean by discrepancies? The check is valid. I've done business with this bank for years," she said, her voice growing more confident. Mr. Thompson seemed uncomfortable, but didn't back down. "I'm sorry, but we have to follow protocol. We'll need some time to look into this further." Carla stood up, her patience running thin. "I'm the owner of this bank," she said firmly. Mr. Thompson looked at her, confused. He was clearly taken aback. Carla had kept her ownership of the bank private, never flaunting it or using it for personal gain, but she felt it was time to make her point clear. "I don't think you understand," she continued, her tone now calm but direct. "I own this bank, and I expect better treatment. I will not stand for being treated like this." Mr. Thompson's face turned pale as he realized the gravity of the situation. He had no idea who Carla was, but now, standing in front of him, was the very woman who owned the institution he worked for. The room was filled with silence as both of them processed the moment. Carla was left speechless by the unnecessary trouble she had faced, and Mr. Thompson was filled with regret, knowing he had made a serious mistake. Carla stood at the counter, her heart racing with a mix of frustration and disbelief. She had just told Mr. Thompson, the bank manager, that she was the owner of the very bank he worked for. The tension in the room was thick, and Carla could see the shock on his face as he processed her words. For a brief moment, it felt like time had stopped. Mr. Thompson stammered, trying to find his words. I didn't know," he finally managed to say. "I apologize, Ms. Johnson. I had no idea." Carla's expression softened, but her frustration remained. She had never been one to flaunt her wealth for a position, but this was an example of something she couldn't ignore. "You didn't know?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is that I was treated unfairly because of assumptions you made. My check is valid, and there should have been no hesitation in processing it." Mr. Thompson nodded, clearly embarrassed. "I'm so sorry, Ms. Johnson. I made an assumption based on nothing more than the amount of the check and your appearance. I didn't mean to disrespect you, but I understand how my actions were wrong." Carla took a deep breath. "It's not just about me," she said calmly. "Think about how many people walk through those doors every day, and how often they face similar treatment. What if they don't have the confidence to stand up for themselves the way I just did? How many others have been silently judged and turned away because of these biases?" There was a long pause as Mr. Thompson looked down, ashamed of his actions. Carla could see that he was genuinely remorseful, but she also knew that this situation needed to serve as a lesson, not just for him, but for the entire bank. "I'm not here to make things difficult," Carla continued, her tone now more measured. "But this is a chance for change. A chance to make sure that this never happens again." Mr. Thompson nodded again. "I understand, and I promise you, Ms. Johnson, that I will take full responsibility for this. I'll make sure to go through diversity and inclusion training, and I'll help ensure that the bank reviews its policies on how to handle situations like this in the future." Carla was quiet for a moment, reflecting on his words. She had been angry at first, but now she saw that Mr. Thompson genuinely wanted to correct his mistake. This was more than just about him. It was about the system that allowed these kinds of assumptions to be made in the first place. It was about creating an environment where everyone, regardless of their background, would be treated with respect and fairness. "I appreciate your willingness to learn," Carla said, her voice softening. "But I'm going to make sure that this becomes part of a bigger conversation at the bank. We need to set an example for others, so no one else has to feel what I felt today." As Carla left the bank that day, she felt a sense of purpose. She had turned a moment of frustration into an opportunity for growth. She wasn't just going to let this go. It was a chance to make real change, not only in the bank, but in the way people viewed each other in general. Carla knew that this was the beginning of something bigger than herself, and she was determined to make sure it didn't stop here. The future, she hoped, would be one where fairness and equality were a given, not a fight. Carla walked out of the bank, her mind racing. She was still processing the events that had just unfolded. The shock, the surprise, and the way Mr. Thompson had reacted all played over in her head. But amidst the whirlwind of emotions, Carla knew that this incident was bigger than one misunderstanding. It was a moment that could spark change, and that was exactly what she planned to do. For the rest of the day, Carla tried to focus on her work, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the bank. The conversation she had with Mr. Thompson felt like a turning point, not just for him, but for the entire institution. She was determined to make sure that no one else would face the same treatment. Carla knew that it would take more than just a one-on-one conversation to bring about the change she wanted to see. That night, she sat down with her lawyer, Samantha, to discuss what had happened. Samantha listened attentively, nodding along as Carla recounted the events in detail. "It sounds like Mr. Thompson didn't realize who you were," Samantha said thoughtfully. "But it's clear that this wasn't just a simple mistake. There's an underlying issue here. It's about the assumptions people make based on appearance, and that's something that can't be ignored." Carla nodded in agreement. "Exactly. This isn't just about me. It's about how people are treated based on their race, their background, or even their status. People like Mr. Thompson need to understand that their actions can have real consequences." Samantha smiled. "I think you're on the right path, but we need to be strategic about how we handle this. We can't let it slip by without making sure it doesn't happen again. We should reach out to the bank and ask for a meeting to discuss diversity training, as well as a review of their policies." The idea of taking action in such a direct way excited Carla. She had always believed in standing up for what was right, and now, more than ever, she felt a sense of responsibility to make sure that what had happened to her didn't happen to others. The following week, Carla reached out to Megan, a high-level executive at the bank, to request a formal meeting. Megan was receptive to Carla's concerns, and they scheduled a time to sit down and discuss the issue further. When Carla arrived at the bank for the meeting, she was greeted by Megan and several other members of the leadership team. They were all very aware of the situation, and Carla could see that they were taking her concerns seriously. "Ms. Johnson, thank you for bringing this to our attention," Megan began. "We truly apologize for the incident that occurred, and we want to ensure that this kind of thing doesn't happen again. We are committed to creating an inclusive environment for all of our customers and employees." Carla nodded, appreciating their acknowledgement. "It's not just about me. It's about creating a culture where everyone is treated with respect and fairness. This needs to be part of a larger conversation." Megan agreed, and the group spent the next hour discussing how to implement diversity training, better employee education, and clear protocols for handling situations like the one Carla had experienced. They also discussed introducing new policies that would help ensure inclusivity across all levels of the bank. As Carla left the meeting, she felt a sense of accomplishment. It wasn't just about one incident. It was about setting a precedent, about making sure that the future would look different. She knew it would take time, but she was confident that her actions had already begun to bring about meaningful change. The road ahead wasn't easy, but Carla was ready to continue the fight. She had always been a woman of purpose, and now, more than ever, she was determined to make sure that her voice was heard. The experience had changed her, but it had also opened the door to something much bigger, something that could help countless others. The days following her meeting with the bank executives had been a whirlwind for Carla. She had made it clear to the leadership team that change needed to happen, and she was ready to hold them accountable. The momentum from the meeting felt like a small victory, but Carla knew there was still work to be done. A few weeks later, the bank contacted Carla to let her know that they had implemented new diversity training programs for all employees. The leadership team was fully on board with improving inclusivity, and they were eager to show Carla that they were committed to making real changes. Carla agreed to meet with them again to discuss the next steps. She was cautiously optimistic, but she also knew that this couldn't just be about words. It had to be about action. She wanted to see tangible results. When the day of the meeting arrived, Carla walked into the conference room feeling confident. She was greeted by Megan, the executive she had worked with before, and a few other key leaders from the bank. They all looked eager to hear what she had to say. "Ms. Johnson, thank you for taking the time to meet with us again," Megan began, her voice sincere. "We've taken your feedback seriously, and we've been working hard to ensure that our bank fosters a more inclusive environment for all our customers and employees. We're committed to making things right." Carla nodded, but she didn't let herself get carried away by their words. She wanted to hear the specifics, the concrete actions they had taken to address the issues she had raised. "I appreciate that," Carla replied, her voice calm but firm. "But words are not enough. I want to know what steps you've taken to address the systemic issues. I want to know what changes have been made and how you plan to ensure that this doesn't happen again." Megan and the team looked at each other before Megan spoke again, a sense of determination in her voice. "We've implemented comprehensive diversity and inclusion training for all employees. It's mandatory for everyone, from the tellers to the executives. The training covers unconscious bias, understanding different cultures, and how to handle situations like the one you experienced." Carla listened closely, impressed by the effort they were putting into the training. But she didn't stop there. "What about your hiring practices?" she asked. "How are you making sure that people of color and women are represented at every level of the bank, including leadership positions?" Megan nodded, acknowledging Carla's concerns. "We've revamped our hiring process to ensure that we're not overlooking talented individuals from underrepresented groups. We're actively working with recruitment agencies that focus on diversity. Our goal is to create a more balanced and fair environment, where everyone has an equal opportunity to succeed." Carla felt a sense of relief wash over her. These were the changes she had hoped for, real, actionable steps that would make a difference. But she knew that the work wasn't over. It was just the beginning. "I'm glad to hear that," Carla said, her tone warm but still serious. "But I think it's important that we hold each other accountable. I'll be checking in with you periodically to see how things are progressing. This isn't just a one-time conversation. It's about ensuring that this becomes part of the fabric of your company." Megan nodded, her expression one of genuine commitment. "Absolutely. We understand that this is an ongoing process, and we're ready to do the work." As Carla left the meeting, she felt a sense of hope. The conversation had gone well, and she believed that the bank was sincere in its efforts to make real change. It wasn't going to happen overnight, but it was a start. She was proud of the part she had played in making the bank a more inclusive place for everyone, and she was determined to continue pushing for change wherever she saw injustice. The future was still uncertain, but Carla knew one thing for sure. She had made a difference, and she wasn't going to stop now. Months passed after the meeting with the bank's leadership team. Carla had kept her word. She stayed in touch with the bank, checking in regularly to see how they were progressing with their diversity and inclusion initiatives. The leadership had followed through with their commitment to change, and Carla could feel the difference in the atmosphere each time she visited the bank. It wasn't just the training they had implemented, it was a shift in the culture. Employees seemed more aware, more willing to listen and learn. The bank had created open forums where staff could discuss their concerns and share their experiences. It was clear that the bank was making an effort to be more inclusive, not just on paper, but in practice. But for Carla, the most rewarding part was seeing how the changes were impacting the community. Over the last few months, the bank had started to build stronger relationships with local businesses and organizations, especially those that had been historically underrepresented. The bank's leadership was making strides to connect with communities that had once felt ignored or mistreated by financial institutions. Carla knew the road ahead was still long. She had witnessed firsthand how difficult it could be to change long-held beliefs and biases. But the fact that the bank was trying, truly trying, was a start, and that was all she could ask for. One afternoon, as Carla walked into the bank for a routine visit, she noticed something different. The employees were interacting with customers in a more thoughtful way. The tone was friendly, open, and professional. Carla felt proud. She had played a role in pushing for these changes, and seeing them come to life was fulfilling. She headed to the manager's office to check in with Megan, the executive she had worked closely with. As she walked through the office, she was greeted by several familiar faces, each of them offering her a smile. Carla smiled back, feeling more at ease than ever before. Megan greeted her warmly as she entered the office. "Carla, it's so good to see you. I'm glad you stopped by today. I've been hearing great things about the changes here," Carla said, taking the seat. "It's really starting to feel different. People seem more open, more willing to learn." Megan smiled, clearly proud of what the bank had accomplished. "We've still got a lot of work to do, but we're seeing results. And I think the most important part is that we're listening. We're building an environment where everyone's voice matters." Carla nodded. "That's all I ever wanted, to make sure that no one gets treated the way I was treated that day. To make sure that people can walk into a bank and be treated with respect, no matter who they are or where they come from." Megan looked at Carla with respect. "You've helped us create a culture of accountability. You made sure we didn't just talk about change. We acted on it. That's something we'll always be grateful for." As Carla left the meeting, she felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The road to change was never easy, and there would always be more work to do. But seeing the progress they had made gave her hope for the future. Carla knew that she had started something important, something that would continue to affect the lives of countless people for years to come. She had taken a stand for fairness, for equality, and for respect. And now it was up to everyone else to carry that message forward. As she walked out of the bank, Carla couldn't help but smile. She had made a difference, and she was ready to keep making more. Carla's involvement in the changes at the bank had not only affected the institution, but it had also begun to influence the wider community. As the bank improved its approach to diversity and inclusion, word spread quickly. Carla was contacted by various local groups, businesses, and even schools that were interested in hearing her story and learning more about how the changes had come about. One afternoon, Carla was invited to speak at a community event focused on empowering women and minorities in business. It was held at the local community center, and a large crowd had gathered to hear her speak. As she entered the room, Carla was greeted by excited faces and warm handshakes. She smiled and made her way to the stage, feeling both humbled and honored. "Thank you all for having me here today," Carla began, her voice calm but strong. "I'm here to talk about an experience I had, one that opened my eyes to how important it is to create spaces where everyone feels valued. A few months ago, I had an encounter at a bank that made me realize how far we still have to go in terms of equality." The room fell quiet as Carla recounted the incident at the bank. She explained how Mr. Thompson had hesitated to process her check because of assumptions he had made based on her appearance. She told them how she had calmly revealed that she owned the bank and how it had sparked a conversation about the biases people often carry without even realizing it. "I didn't speak out that day to cause trouble," Carla continued. "I spoke out because I knew that if I didn't, it would continue happening. I knew that this wasn't just about me. It was about everyone who's ever been treated unfairly because of who they are. And that's why I'm here today. I want to encourage all of us to keep pushing for change, to keep speaking up, and to create environments where everyone is treated with respect." The audience was captivated. Carla's words resonated deeply with many of the people in the room. They understood the impact of what she was saying. It wasn't just a story of one incident. It was a reflection of something much larger. People were inspired by her bravery and determination to take action. After the event, many of the attendees approached Carla to thank her for sharing her experience. Some even shared their own stories of discrimination and bias. Carla listened attentively, offering support and encouraging them to continue advocating for themselves and others. One woman, Jessica, shared how her own business had struggled to gain recognition in a market dominated by larger, more established companies. "I faced challenges every day," Jessica said. "I've been told that I wasn't qualified, that my ideas weren't good enough, all because of my background. But hearing your story gives me hope. I feel like if we all keep pushing, things can change." Carla smiled, feeling a sense of pride. This wasn't just about changing one institution. It was about creating a movement. People were finding their voices, and they were ready to take action. The ripple effect from her experience had created a wave of awareness and motivation, and Carla knew that this was only the beginning. As the event came to an end, Carla felt grateful for the opportunity to share her story. She had sparked something important, something that had the potential to grow far beyond the walls of the bank or the community center. It was about making the world a more just and equal place for everyone, no matter who they were. Walking out of the event, Carla felt more determined than ever. She knew there would be challenges ahead, but she was ready. She was just one person, but together, with others by her side, she knew they could make a difference. The work wasn't finished, but it had begun, and that was all that mattered. As the months went by, Carla's efforts to improve diversity and inclusion at the bank were becoming more noticeable. The changes weren't just in the bank's policies. They were being felt in the community, in the way employees treated each other, and even in the conversations people were having in everyday life. Carla's story had inspired others to speak up, and more people were demanding fairness in all areas of life. Carla's role in this transformation wasn't over, but she had learned to approach things with patience. Real change takes time, and she knew that every small victory mattered. She had seen firsthand how powerful it could be to simply stand up for what was right. But Carla wasn't stopping there. She wanted to continue helping people find their voice, especially those who had never felt heard. One afternoon, Carla received a call from Megan, the bank executive who had worked closely with her on the changes. "Carla, we've been getting a lot of positive feedback from customers," Megan said, excitement in her voice. "People are noticing the difference. They're feeling more welcomed, and they're more likely to trust us with their business." Carla smiled at the good news. That's exactly what we wanted. It's about building relationships, not just focusing on transactions. People need to feel respected, no matter who they are. Megan agreed. And it's not just our customers. Our employees are also more engaged. They feel like they're part of something bigger, something that values them for who they are. We've even seen an increase in employee retention, which shows that our internal culture is improving. Carla felt proud of what they had accomplished together. But even with all the progress, she knew there was still much work to be done. The work of changing a system, of shifting perspectives, was never truly finished. There would always be more challenges to face, but that didn't discourage her. Later that week, Carla received an invitation to speak at a national conference on business ethics and diversity. She was excited for the opportunity, but also a little nervous. It wasn't easy to stand in front of hundreds of people, sharing such a personal and important story. But she knew that her voice could make a difference. By telling her story, she could inspire others to take action, just as she had been inspired all those months ago. The day of the conference arrived, and Carla stood at the podium, looking out over the sea of faces. She took a deep breath before beginning. A few months ago, I walked into a bank where I was treated unfairly. The manager didn't know who I was, and he assumed I didn't belong. But that moment sparked something in me. It made me realize how often people are judged based on appearances, and how much work we still have to do to make sure that everyone is treated equally. The room was silent as Carla continued. It's not enough to just talk about change. We have to actively work to create it. I'm proud of the progress we've made, but I know there's more to do. And I believe that each of us can play a role in that change. It starts with us. The applause that followed was overwhelming, and Carla felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had used her voice to create change, and now she was empowering others to do the same. As she left the stage, Carla knew that the path forward was not always going to be easy, but she was more determined than ever to keep pushing for equality, to keep speaking out, and to continue making a difference, one step at a time. The journey was far from over, but Carla had become more confident in her ability to inspire and lead. With every person she touched, every story she shared, Carla knew she was helping to create a world where everyone's voice mattered. And that was the future she wanted to see. As the months turned into a year, Carla's involvement with the bank continued to grow, but her focus was no longer solely on one institution. The changes she had started were making ripples across the community, inspiring more businesses to examine their own practices and to think about how they treated their employees and customers. She had become a voice for fairness, a symbol of what could be achieved when someone stood up for what was right. Her efforts hadn't just changed the bank, they had sparked a movement. Carla was invited to speak at conferences, participate in panel discussions, and consult with companies that wanted to make changes in their own workplaces. Her message was clear. Fairness, respect, and inclusion were the cornerstones of a successful, thriving community. It wasn't just a matter of policy. It was about creating an environment where everyone could grow, contribute, and feel valued. One day, Carla received a call from Megan, the bank executive she had worked so closely with. "Carla, I just wanted to let you know that the leadership team here has decided to honor your contributions. We're launching a new community program in your name. It's all about fostering leadership and providing opportunities for underrepresented groups. You've done so much for us, and we want to give back." Carla was taken aback. "I don't know what to say. This is more than I could have ever imagined." Megan laughed. "You've earned it. You've changed the way we think and the way we do business. You've shown us that progress is possible when we put in the effort." The new program, which was called the Carla Johnson Leadership Initiative, aimed to empower young people, especially women and minorities, by providing mentorship, resources, and scholarships to help them succeed in business. Carla couldn't believe it. She had set out to create a small change, and now her name was tied to something much larger. It was a testament to everything she had worked for, a way to give others the opportunity she had fought so hard to create. The launch event for the program was held at the bank's headquarters, and Carla couldn't help but feel proud as she watched the leaders of the bank, along with the local community, come together to celebrate the success of the initiative. The room was filled with energy, excitement, and optimism. Carla was introduced as the keynote speaker, and as she stood at the podium, she looked out over the crowd, her heart full. "This isn't just about me," Carla said, her voice steady and filled with emotion. "This is about all of us, about the people who come together to create change. We are here today because we believe in the power of fairness, in the strength of diversity, and in the idea that everyone deserves a chance. This program is a step toward making sure that those chances are available to anyone who wants them. And it's only the beginning." The applause that followed was louder than any Carla had ever heard. The initiative was already making a difference, and she was only getting started. She had set out to right a wrong, and now she was changing lives. Carla knew the work wasn't finished, but she was more committed than ever to creating a world where people were judged by their character, not by the color of their skin or any other factor. As the evening came to a close, Carla stood with her family and friends, reflecting on how far she had come. The journey had been challenging, but every step had been worth it. She had started with a simple desire to stand up for herself, but along the way, she had created a legacy that would continue to inspire others for years to come. Carla smiled, knowing that her work had only just begun. The future was bright, and it was full of possibilities.